Day 49, ladies and gentlemen, of our 1000 Dawns. So, the more eagle-eyed observers may have noticed that I put out a video a few short hours ago. And for what they were worth, I mostly did it because I did kind of want to experiment with just doing a little bit more editing in my work and just trying to create a little fun little idea. For the purposes of those who didn't see it, the video is just entitled "Every U.S. President Described by In-Betweeners" quotes. So yeah, you know what? It took about like an hour and a half to do, and it's only about 3 minutes in length. I was a little bit distracted through certain points because, well, finding the right quick quotes to attribute and other things aside. So it's been another fairly busy day, all things considered. Although I should point out there were a few things that happened last night that I feel like worth mentioning. For example, for the first time since I've actually been able to start driving like on my own with a full license and all that, I had to pull off my first emergency stop last night because in order to get to where I need to be, I need to drive past this large roundabout where Newcastle International is, and I was already halfway getting across the roundabout, and a guy literally pulls out of the grey car and didn't even consider the idea of looking right. And I had to literally, if I had done it like about half a second later, we would have absolutely have had a crash. And I was already like kind of half trying to like I don't know, either half steer the car in case he tried to like go the other way in a last ditch attempt to avoid. And honestly, I did it, and I was like leaning forward so hard, I was just basically my chest was pressed against like the steering wheel. I didn't even sound the horn or anything like that. Not that he even like by the time it was over and I'd come to a stop, and when I did press the horn, he still didn't even look right. Still, it's down to stuff like that. It's the things you have to bear in mind, and if I haven't mentioned this before, but I'll certainly mention it now. Um, just like whenever I'm at work, very similar to driving, what people don't really seem to take on board is the idea that I have still got, in my opinion, a very, very concentrated job to do. And it is because when stuff like that happens. Now, thankfully, like I said, that's the first time in 3 years I've had to do an emergency stop. I would rather go through the rest of my life without that happening again because, quite frankly, I do not particularly think we'll be anywhere near as lucky. Um, it's also the idea that's possibly I consider the idea of getting one of those like dashboard camcorders and stuff like that you just sort of like click onto the windshield, and more for insurance purposes of anything else, so that I can prove that who was in the right and the wrong and stuff like that. Very handy devices, no doubt, and they'll probably get featured on one of those UK driving like maniacs compilations you see elsewhere on the internet. So yeah, like I said, it was a nerve-wracking experience. Don't get me wrong, for how short it was, but there it is. So aside from that, by the time I got home at about 2:30 in the morning, I must admit I was well and truly ready for bed. I often find this is the case actually when I've been doing these night shifts. I feel like I have more than earned my sleep. That's the great thing about this line of work. I'm paid more in sleep than I will by actual money, even though I do get paid by money regardless. The only other issue with this is that that is again probably not as much sleep, because I have also made mention that on average over the last 2 weeks now since I've been on these night shifts, I've had in total round about on average about 6 to 5.5 hours sleep on average a night when I do these night shifts about four times a week. And I will start to admit that even earlier today, this frantic and somewhat lack of sleep really is becoming a problem. How is it becoming a problem, you may ask? Because At 9 o'clock this morning, because I had the time to check, people were mowing their lawns already outside, which is irritating, first and foremost, because, well, who mows their lawn at 9 o'clock in the morning? It's been a beautiful day, don't get me wrong, but who does that? And what's even then, because of course I could not get to sleep again because of this, but then kids outside playing and shrieking in the tops of their voices. I can't blame them. I was absolutely the same when I was a child. Annoying as it is, I can't, you just let them get on with it. If anyway, I thought this is the sort of thing that would appeal to people who say kids don't feel safe when they play outside, except in certain parts of the world in which they do and continue to do, and nobody has an issue one way or the other, apart from myself, who really could do with more sleep. Anyway, by the time this is all done, I just got out of bed at 9:30 and just began making my starting off my day, so to speak. However, I will be honest, is that if yesterday my parents did say that I looked very tired when I even got out of bed at about 12 o'clock the night before, today they said my face looked straight up agonized. Which is, it's one of those words I've never really remembered them saying before. But it does raise an interesting question. Or rather, because I know fine well that getting even on average 6 hours is just, it's not the sort of thing that is going to yield great results in years later. But it is an interesting point that I've always considered myself one of those people who has been very good at handling stress. Maybe not necessarily stressful situations, but I've always been very capable of when pressure is mounted, and for one reason or another, you need to find a way to combat it. I've been, again, I consider myself lucky that I've been able to know how to deal with such things. What I will say as time, and that's why people have said that I look a lot younger, or sometimes they think I look a lot older. They just seem to think that I've aged really well. One of those things. Or maybe it's none, and people really do think that maybe they could have said late 20s something. It is what it is. There's not really much I can do about it. And it's probably, I think it's down to the fact that I don't let any real one thing fester in my system for any more than about an hour. Because if I do, it's gonna send my heart spiraling out of control. And the last thing I want is the thought of, keeling over because I'm scared of having a heart attack. Yeah, it's a good, I would say, looking after yourself and learning how to deal with stress, having a fairly cholesterol low diet, staying away from, trans fats and stuff like that is going to send your heart into overdrive. Of course, that's sort of how it should be, and there's reasons why people adopt the idea that, guess what, having all of those things, or rather going without them, is actually a better idea in the long run. And I think for the next couple of weeks, this is something that, once again, I will be able to test to the outer limits, because we have got 10 whole days until the end of the month. And as I've mentioned previously, we don't wait. We get started. We jump the gun a little bit, because we're not waiting until April to start sending us into overdrive. We're going to start that pretty much now. The reasons why? Well, it's because anyone who's familiar with these little countdown videos that I do, where I talk about we've only got 300, then 299 days, stuff like that, it's because I do have this suspicion of constantly being on the run, and therefore time is also running out. And honestly, if I had this kind of momentum, even so much as about 5 years ago, I think things might be a bit different. However, that's of no consequence now. What's more important is what we do here and now. And thus, Bear in mind, guys, tomorrow will mark 50 whole days since we started this little adventure. And I think it would be of some interest to see just how far we have come. But until then, I'll see you guys again next time. Thank you.